The Ten Commandments gets presented to the nation of Israel, coming up next on Bibles on the Bench. Hello everybody, and welcome to another edition of Bibles on the Bench. My name is Trevor, and as many of you know, I used to be one of Jehovah's Witnesses from 1990 until 1997. As a Jehovah's Witness, we said we knew the Bible, but from what I recall, we never really took very much in-depth study into the Ten Commandments, which is one of the crucial backing points to most of Christendom. Instead, we considered that we had God's blessing, and that when God gave Jesus to mankind to save them, Jesus abolished all the Ten Commandments and no one had to actually follow them or really pay them much attention. However, they are very crucial as they are a law, and probably one of the earlier law codes established that actually helped to benefit the people that it was intended for. And what's interesting about this is why the Ten Commandments are quite important and who the author of them is. Now, if we look at Exodus chapter 20 and verse 2, chapter 20 verse 1 actually says, "And God spoke these words." This is God addressing the nation of Israel in Mount Sinai when the laws were being presented. God says, "I am the Lord your God who brought you out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery." Now, this is a very important statement that God is making here. The reason is, of course, why the nation of Israel should be following this particular God. Now, God, our Heavenly Father, could have said, right here, He could have said, "I am the Lord your God who made the heavens and the earth." And would that have carried a lot of weight? Well, perhaps, because through the stories passed down through the nation of Israel, they knew that there was God the Creator who created the heavens and the earth. Now, this could have been quite important, but it may not have meant quite the same thing. God could have also said, "I am the Lord. You shall listen to my laws, for I am the Lord who created all the animals," which could again be quite important, but maybe not carry as much weight. But why did these words here, "I am the Lord your God who brought you out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery," mean so much? Because the God that the nation of Israel was following here was the God of freedom. Now, I know a lot of you may be thinking, well, wait a minute, you've got the Bible, and it's, especially the Old Testament, is full of all these laws that just seem to crunch and compress on the people's shoulders. And there's God, who's created all these things, and it doesn't seem like He's giving much leeway or this sort of thing. But keep in mind the story of the nation of Israel. Now, of course, you have Genesis accounts of the creation of man, the fall from grace, and how God chose His people and this sort of thing. But it never really had the same kind of impact, because the people who God appointed in Genesis and those sort of things were never under anything really that suppressed their freedoms on a daily basis. Now, when you get into Exodus, of course, things change. If you look at Exodus chapter 1 and verse 8, and I'm going to read this out of the Jerusalem Bible, it says, "Then there came to power in Egypt a new king who knew nothing of Joseph." Now, if you remember the accounts, the nation of Israel, after Abraham came around and his son Israel, of course, married and created a large family, and this became the nation of Israel over time. Now, Israel's sons, of course, included Joseph, who moved into Egypt and brought his family over and this sort of thing. As we know, he was also made an heir to the Pharaoh. And of course, Joseph became a Pharaoh and led Egypt out of one of the greatest droughts that it had ever experienced. Of course, under God's help. But this is what happens in Exodus 1 and 8. Then there came to power in Egypt a new king who knew nothing of Joseph. Look, he said to his subjects, these people, the sons of Israel, have become so numerous and strong that they are a threat to us. We must be prudent and take steps against their increasing any further. Or if war should break out, they might add to the number of our enemies. They might take arms against us and so escape out of the country. Accordingly, they put slave drivers over the Israelites to wear them down under heavy loads. In this way they built the store cities of Pithom and Ramesses for Pharaoh. But the more they were crushed, the more they increased and spread, and men came to dread the sons of Israel. The Egyptians forced the sons of Israel into slavery and made their lives unbearable. With hard labor, work with clay and with brick, all kinds of work in the fields, they forced on them every kind of labor. So there was no stoppage. There was no Saturdays off. There was no, 9 to 5, what a way to make a living. It was 12, 16 hours worth of heavy, heavy work. Although it doesn't say that here, but you can only imagine. And probably not much food on that type of slavery work. And of course, the whips breaking their backs as it went along. Okay, now we get into 15. It gets worse. The king of Egypt then spoke to the Hebrew midwives, one of whom was named Shifra. Okay, sorry. And the other Puah. When you midwives attend Hebrew women, he said, watch the 2 stones carefully. The 2 stones. The exact meaning is uncertain according to this. Okay, watch the 2 stones carefully. If it is a boy, kill him. If a girl, let her live. But the midwives were God-fearing. They disobeyed the command of the king of Egypt, and let the boys live. So the king of Egypt summoned the midwives. Why, he asked them, have you done this and spared the boys? The Hebrew women are not like Egyptian women. So he's saying they are less, not significant. They answered Pharaoh, they are hardy and they give birth The Hebrew women are not like Egyptian women, they answered Pharaoh. They are hardy and they give birth before the midwife reaches them. God was kind to the midwives. The people went on increasing and grew very powerful. Since the midwives reverenced God, he granted them descendants. Pharaoh then gave his subjects this command: throw all the boys born to the Hebrews into the river, but let all the girls live. And then it gets into how Moses was rescued out of the river and all that. But you can see in the beginning of Exodus here how harsh Pharaoh was to the Hebrews. And this was really the first account of this mass slavery, genocide type of thing found in the Bible. Now, when God says here, I am the Lord your God who brought you out of Egypt, out of the land of slavery, this carried the most weight to the Israelites because they now understood that the God that was behind them, who was helping them, was the God of freedom, especially from the oppressive hardships that they faced under Pharaoh and his regime, his murderous regime, for that matter. So now we have the understanding and the authorization, the authority of God himself, who is presenting these laws of freedom to his people. And this is why it is important to listen to this God, for he is the God of freedom. My name is Trevor, and thank you for watching Bibles on the Bench. And tune in as we examine the actual first commandment and many others individually. Until next time, may God be with you.